You're listening to Supervision with a Vision, where we discuss all things supervision. I'm your host, Sarah, professional counselor, marriage and family therapist, play therapist, eating disorder specialist, and cookie lover, with my co-host, Heather, marriage and family therapist, certified Together in Texas counselor, a Texas transplant from California, and outdoor adventurer. Hi, welcome today to Supervision with a Vision. Today, Heather and I are talking about past experiences in counseling and supervision. This week we read The Connection Between Past and Future Therapy, published in Psychology Today, 2023. Heather, this article gave us a lot of things to think about and talk about.
Yeah, it did.
One of the first points it makes is that there is research to support that people with positive experiences in counseling and supervision are more likely to continue in counseling and to go back to counseling or supervision in the future.
Right. I think that something to consider is that's probably across the board kind of it's a logical statement. Like if you like your doctor, and you've had illnesses and you've gotten over them, well, the next time you're sick, you're going to be more willing to go see that doctor if you've had success. So that's kind of looking at it more from a physical well-being state.
Sure.
But if you've gone to counseling and you've navigated something and you go
and had a positive outcome.
Right. And then it's not so hard to go back. It's more like, I've done this before. I know it's helpful.
Sure.
I think supervision plays out the same way. I personally had a funny incidents trying to find a supervisor when I moved states because I was like, oh, this is so different. It's very different. What I had before and then what I was getting here. And it took me a minute to figure that out, but I knew what I was looking for because I didn't need to have exactly what I had in my previous location, but I did know what I didn't want. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's like I had this positive
absolutely.
experience. I need someone that thinks like me, that does these things.
What was the difference?
I think it took me a while to hear where in California, it was so much more clinical and constantly based in theory, like constantly.
Really?
And it took me a while here to like get out of my own head that it wasn't all theory. Like the supervisor that I ended up with in one of my very first sessions with him, he said, yeah, but like, how are you doing with that?
Oh, so
like,
and I'm wondering, do you think it was specifically California compared to Texas, or was that about one supervisor and the style of a different supervisor?
I think it could be. I interviewed about 5 before I fell into what I really wanted. And I had some other funny experiences that were just strange and odd. But I think in California, I got my supervisor in my clinical setting. And it wasn't outside.
Sure.
And so here I was more doing like this clinical supervisor already had a location, but it was, I had no actual marriage and family supervisor. So I had to find one. And it was an interesting experience. But once I kind of knew what I liked about it. I liked these clinical aspects, and I interviewed one and he was so personal. And I was like, wait, he actually wants me to tell him. I'm supposed to say to you what I'm thinking right now, and I'm allowed to.
Well, I don't know. That's kind of our next point. Let's talk about our next point. That this idea of a person's past experience is definitely not black and white. So it's not, was it good or bad, but there's a lot of context to it.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think that's what you're describing. I mean, California versus Texas is one part of
Culturally,
this,
it's different, right?
But also the personality or style of one supervisor compared to the next. What about, you didn't, I mean, I'm wondering what you think about this, but you described that the supervisor that you had in California, you met through your school or through the school program. I think that is an important detail.
Yeah.
That developmentally, you as a counselor, I mean, either you needed it or they expected that you needed something very fundamental.
Right.
And then moving on from that, meeting a supervisor that wasn't connected to you while you were a student, maybe their thought process or decision making about that was different. You're no longer a student, so they're not connecting you to fundamental topics related to theory or
Right. They,
listening skills or
right.
something like
I
that.
think you're right.
They're more nuanced.
Mm-hmm.
So there's what can you think of any other parts of that decision or layers to an experience in counseling or supervision that affects how people perceive their
Well, and
experience?
I think that this is the part that I agree in, that it can be a positive experience, but that doesn't mean that along the way that it's comfortable or that it's
Yes.
easy. So I think
Yeah.
that's what they're kind of referring to. And like, it's not black and white. It's not always going to look perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, if you think back on it and it was a good experience, then you're more likely to do it
Yeah.
again.
I have this client right now, and I've known her quite a while. When I met her, she was, oh, really, she'd stepped down from a higher level of care, and probably before she was ready to step
Okay.
down from a
Right.
higher level of care,
Mm-hmm.
and now is has made a lot of progress, and it can reflect back on that. And she would say that. She would
Mm-hmm.
say when she met me, she did not want to talk to me,
Right.
that she did not agree with me, that we were
Mm-hmm.
not seeing eye to eye. But now she can reflect back and think, in a positive way, she's a completely different person.
Mm-hmm.
Her perspective on life and herself and her relationships is very different in a positive way.
Right.
And so I think at this point, she could think about her experience and say, this has been a positive experience.
Right.
If she had, if I'd asked her that question or she'd reflected on it after the first maybe two times we
Right.
saw
They
each
would not.
other, right, it was
Mm-hmm.
hard.
Mm-hmm.
She was having a hard time. So it would not have been as positive.
Right. That is true, to leave space for that reflection. Because if it's
Mm-hmm.
too soon after and it hasn't been all like wonderful and sunshiny,
Yeah.
then you may not realize it's a positive experience.
Right. What about seeing a client who I'm thinking like you and I both see kid clients,
Hmm.
whose parents have
Oh, yeah, they
made
made
them
them.
come?
Yeah, they don't want to be there, right?
Do you think that instantly sets the tone for their entire experience?
I mean, I would hope not. I think
Mm-hmm.
that it takes some breaking through and some rapport building and things. I've had the experience in the last couple of years that I had a client that did not want to come, that literally was like physically hard to get in the door. And then once they kind of got on their own with therapy and realized there was a lot of leeway, like, oh, yeah, you can take off your shoes, you can kind of
Yeah.
hang out, even though we spent many a sessions not saying too much.
Uh-huh.
And now they're at a point in therapy where they could step down to maybe every other week or maybe
Mm-hmm.
even like every 3 weeks. They don't want to.
Yeah.
So it's like that,
They
you know,
find it useful.
right.
I had and didn't that feel good?
Yeah, it
I
does.
mean, I had a kid say that something similar to me. She was saying, just with school and a family trip or
Hmm.
something, we'd miss seeing each other for a couple of weeks. And I saw her last week and she said, "Oh,
Right.
I've just been thinking I just need to talk to Sarah."
Uh huh.
And that certainly was not her attitude. I mean, she was always pleasant and sweet, but a little resistant to the
Right.
idea of counseling in the very beginning. She was a little frustrated that parents were expecting her to
Right.
come. So a big change for her to say, "Oh,
Yes.
I've just been thinking I need to talk to Sarah about
Right.
this."
Right.
She is feeling the positive benefits and now
Yes.
would reflect back and see
Right.
that this was a positive experience. We've talked a lot about people with positive experiences. What about people with negative experiences?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, quick question for you. Are you someone who wants to be fit, healthy, and happy? And what if I told you you could get your dream body by simply just listening to a podcast? I'm Josh.
And I'm KG, and we're the hosts of the Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast.
Listen, we get it. Fitness isn't easy. Carbs, no carbs.
Just stop, okay? It doesn't have to be that complicated. And that's why we made this podcast. We get straight to the facts so you can become your best you.
So the way to check us out is click the link in the show notes or search Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast on any of the major podcast platforms. We'll see you soon.
I think we've all probably sat in the room with a client that comes in and was like, "Look, I've done therapy before and it didn't work."
And
Right?
it
Like,
didn't work.
right.
Right. Yeah.
So, like, it takes a lot for them to even be in your room, like, even talking to you. But I always like to find out why. Like,
Hmm.
what about your previous experience didn't work? One, to make sure sometimes you're just not matched with the right therapist. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes there's just a catch that doesn't
Hmm.
work.
Hmm.
But then also, like, what was going on then? And what were your expectations?
Yeah.
And, and then where are we at now? Or is it the same problem that's kind of perseverated for a long time? Or is
Hmm.
it something different? Or is your spouse making you come or whatever?
Hmm.
I mean, all
Hmm.
those things.
Right. Multi-layered.
Right.
There's a lot of
Again.
there's so many layers to that. What about in supervision? I mean, so we talked about resistant, and I
Hmm.
don't usually like that word to
Right.
describe clients, but people who are not so motivated for counseling at
Hmm.
any point. So, what about people, we're all required as supervisors or counselors to get supervision. What about, have you run across supervisees that aren't so motivated for supervision or that have had a bad experience? And what does that mean, or what does that look like?
I think that sometimes that looks like a, are they willing to try it again? Or if they've been, I've had a supervisee come to me that was like, had a supervisor for 6 months and it wasn't going well
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted to try something different. I'm always a little leery because I feel like most of us that are supervisors are doing it because we
They want to
like doing
help.
it. We want to
Right.
help. So what
Uh-huh.
happened in that dynamic?
Uh-huh.
But I've also seen some be really like I don't want to, this, I don't mean this to come off wrong, but like they know it all, right? Like
Oh,
they
they're
are,
done.
right,
Ding.
right,
They're done cooking.
right.
They
And
don't need any more
you're like,
supervision.
oh, but you do. And
Right.
the fact that you think that would really reflect that you do.
Well, I think it really reflects on somebody's perspective about counseling
Right?
because you're
Yeah,
not ever done.
right, right.
But um, I think that the idea of, an early experience really impacts later experiences related to supervision, to me, really emphasizes the importance of your first supervisor
Oh, absolutely.
or that first supervision experience. And
Hmm.
like for a lot of us, that's in school.
Right.
Um, do you do you often get supervisees that are really, really new?
Late for some reason, yes, lately,
Yeah.
not before, but I mean, sometimes I get them very,
Yeah.
very fresh
Yeah.
and they're very new and they don't know what to expect.
Right. Right.
And, whatever schools maybe said you got to meet with the supervisor for an hour a week. And they're like, okay, what are we going to talk
They
about?
don't even know what
Right,
that means, right?
right,
So you're helping define that or set the
right.
expectation. And
I
I think that's
even,
really pivotal.
I even had one submit their vacation request to me. And I was
Oh,
like, oh, you don't work for me. You're at a location different from me. I mean, thanks for letting me
I was
know.
gonna say if someone did that with me, I'd appreciate it. I'd say like, oh, well, I'll put that on my calendar
Right.
for you. But
But yeah, I just
it
thought
can
it
be a
was
little more casual than
right.
that.
And I think that's, again, schooling, right? Like whatever
Hmm.
you're taught in school. And maybe it was really stressed that you need to be very formal and very,
Maybe they didn't take a vacation in school
right.
and that hadn't
It's
come
true.
up before.
Right.
Huh. Um, I think, and I mean, that's a hoping that the school experience with supervision is positive.
Right.
I've had quite a few that come to me pretty soon after school and they've had not so great experiences. So they're
Hmm.
already set up to have kind of a negative perspective on
Right. Like
supervision
I have to
because
be here.
right, they felt
Yeah.
like they didn't get out of it what they wanted to get out of it. It wasn't a positive relationship to
Hmm.
them.
Well, and this is kind of in here in the States when you do your what do we call it? An internship when you're still in
Hmm.
school. We're practicum. There we
Practicum,
go.
internship,
Yeah. When you
apprenticeship,
do that,
maybe.
all that, usually it's a professor that's your supervisor, and sometimes those professors are stressed out or maxed beyond their level, and sometimes it doesn't work. It just depends on like asking for what you need, right?
Yeah.
And as a student, are you going to speak up and say, "Can I have a different supervisor?" Probably not. You know.
Or is there even the option?
Right. They might be the
I
only
think
person that.
in the times in the school settings where I was required to have a supervisor,
It was kind
I,
of assigned.
yeah, I don't think that there were enough people for me to say, can I switch? And it would not have been appropriate.
Right. Would have
Maybe,
caused bigger problems.
right.
Right.
I think maybe I should have, but I didn't. If I had asked for that in my practicum the very first time around in my
Hmm.
master's program, I think they might have.
Right.
But I didn't know to advocate for myself.
I agree. I don't think
Yeah.
students know that, or do they have the time for that, or
Right.
can they even process
Right.
the what
Yeah.
would happen
Yeah.
if they did it?
Well, but I mean, I say that, but hindsight is
Right.
2020.
Hmm.
That at that point, did I know what good or not so good supervision
Right.
felt like or looked
Right.
like? No.
Exactly.
So did I know that I was getting something that wasn't really meeting my needs?
No.
No.
Right.
Well, so if we sometimes get a supervisee that's had a negative experience and so it's colored their future
Hmm.
experience, how do you begin to shape that or change it or help them to have a new kind of experience so that moving forward it's different?
I kind of put them in charge of supervision, meaning what do you want out of this?
Hmm.
Like, what are some of your goals? And then if they give me very flat baseline clinical goals, then I might come back with, no, 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 I meant for you professionally, personally, like, like get more into the other things that go into it, not just so try to reach them at a level of like, this can be a good experience. This doesn't
Hmm.
have to be, and then talk about, I mean, I think this is where group supervision really helps. Like if they have another peer,
Yeah,
I think that
that is really
really,
beneficial.
yeah.
While you were saying that, I was thinking that sounds so comparative to me to what it's like to move through stages in school.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're in elementary school, you stand in line to go to the bathroom,
Right.
you follow the
Mm-hmm.
rules. There's not a lot of room to change it,
Right. You
make
just
it
keep going.
different.
Right.
Right? You're just figuring it out. And so you do what everybody else does and you're learning
Mm-hmm.
and but then you get a little bit older and you get to pick some of the classes that you want.
Right.
Or you decide, I don't really enjoy that very much. And so why do I want to keep
Taking
taking
that
that?
class. Yeah.
Right. So you can individualize things a little bit, but also your relationship with your teachers change.
Right.
Can you remember a time in your education where you got to a point where you actually had some kind of relationship with one of your
Mm-hmm.
teachers where it was
Yeah.
more just
Absolutely.
they stood and told you to stand in line in the
Right.
bathroom and
Right.
told you what to do? But how old were you?
Well, the first person I thought of immediately was my freshman year in college, like
Mm-hmm.
immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But then as you were talking more, I was like, oh, actually, in high school,
Uh-huh.
I had a social studies teacher that was pretty amazing and I loved history. So we kind of clicked. And it was one of those situations where it's like, oh, he's a person.
Right.
Like actually human.
Yeah.
Like this
Yeah.
is not
I mean, well, that has to do with our development too,
right,
right? That we
right.
got outside of our own
Yep.
tiny sphere of
Mm-hmm.
experience and noticed other people. But I think so too. I think in high school I noticed what was going on with my teachers
Mm-hmm.
and they were personable and noticed what was going on with me
Right.
and would ask or
Mm-hmm.
comment. And but you increasingly so, right?
Right.
That maybe begins a little bit in high school, but more
Mm-hmm.
in college and then
Right.
more in grad
Right.
school and then more,
Mm-hmm.
um I think that's an important part
Right. And
of
that does,
supervision.
like, as you unfold that and as it continues to develop, even
Hmm.
think about a brand new supervisee that you see and kind of, I keep a lot of structure at the very beginning and a lot of like, this is what we're doing and this is how we do things. But as that evolves, you loosen those reins a
Right,
lot and it's a
right.
lot more
Well,
free flowing.
like your description of your supervisor in Texas
Right.
that started asking you, okay, but
Mhm.
what do you think?
Right. I was like,
Okay, but
oh, wait a
right.
minute.
Okay, but like how did you feel when
Right.
that was happening?
Right. Huh? I'm sorry.
Huh?
What?
I mean, what does that question mean?
Right.
Um, so can you think too, as you maybe had beginnings of relationships with your teachers, was there ever a moment where you thought, well, that was kind of funny,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Like,
I don't know how
oh,
to respond to that?
right. Or realize for the first time maybe a teacher that you really like liked, but you all
Mhm.
of a sudden you knew their point of view on something. You're like,
Yes.
oh, we don't
Yeah,
agree, but
yeah.
I still like you as a person. Like
Right,
that
right.
differentiating of like,
It makes me think, I had a teacher who got divorced
oh,
in 10th grade,
okay.
and I was just really aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she was absolutely appropriate.
Right.
It didn't come into the classroom.
Right.
We didn't ever talk about it,
Right.
but I was aware
Mm-hmm.
and I could tell that there were days where she was having a hard time.
Right. You could see that
And
and understand that.
I think, which is impressive for a bunch of 10th graders, I think we were kind of empathetic to it. We were
Right.
like a little bit gentler
Right. You
on
kind of knew
days
she was
where,
having a hard day or something had
right,
happened. And
yeah. I also remember, I don't know what grade this was, not like after 10th grade, that a teacher noticed that I was having a hard day
mm-hmm.
and
And you were like,
asked.
oh,
And
I'm
I went
sorry. Did the
like,
teacher just ask me something?
yeah, weird, and asked me kind of a personal
Right.
question.
Right.
And I think if I remember right, it was I broke
You
up
were
with
the boy.
somebody. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like sad or
hmm
something. Um, and that teacher was empathetic. And it went like,
Oh,
oh,
right.
huh, weird.
hmm
What? Like we're all mixing, our
Right.
roles are kind of
Kind of
mixing up.
strange
Yeah,
here.
yeah. Have you ever had a supervisee ask you how you're doing or notice that
hmm
something's up
Yes.
or
hmm
huh? Or even ask you like, well, how would you feel if that were happening?
Yeah. Like has asked even
Ooh.
my my impression of something. Well, if you were in my spot, what would you do?
Ooh,
Yeah.
advanced. What an advanced supervisee.
I think that they're just like curious about like, I
Huh.
don't think it's even for their own self-validation. I think it's more that they're curious about like, uh, sometimes we don't always have exactly the same mindset. And so I
Hmm.
think they're actually to a point where they're like, I think this way, but I am curious. What are your thoughts? Like they're a
Yeah.
little bit more. But this also talks about, we talk about supervision a lot because that's what our podcast is a lot. But sometimes I think we even find this with our colleagues as just a consult.
That's what
Like,
I was going to say.
yeah, like you start getting
Yeah.
more and more comfortable where you're like, oh, that's the person I call for this kind of
Right.
question.
I was
Yeah.
going to say that's how I relate to this topic, that your past experiences influence your future
Mm-hmm.
experiences in counseling or supervision, or your decisions to move
Right.
forward. That I think because I have had positive experiences in supervision, that I do
Right. You
look
know.
for
Mm-hmm.
consultation. I look for people who I can do that with. I think it's why we have a podcast about
Right. I
supervision.
think it's
Like if you and I had horrible
right.
personal supervision experiences,
We would not be inclined to do
right,
so.
we wouldn't be talking about this, right?
Right.
Um, well, so the last point in the article is so that as a clinician, as a supervisor, it's an absolute must that we ask about past experiences.
Absolutely.
How do you do that?
I just ask.
Well, like, what are some of your questions?
Like, did you like your last supervisor you were with? Did you get out of it what you wanted?
Mm-hmm.
What are some goals you had? Did you achieve them?
Mm-hmm. I think my starting point, my go-to is, what did you love about your previous
Oh
supervisor,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and what wasn't your favorite?
Right.
So instead of just saying you hated it, but
Right.
what did you love and what wasn't
Right. What didn't
exactly
fit?
fit? Yeah,
Right.
what wasn't your favorite
That's
part?
great.
And then kind of go from there.
Mm-hmm.
That I build on that.
Right.
And I think I know that I even explain my thought process after answering those questions,
Mm-hmm.
that even in the first meeting, so we haven't even maybe agreed to work together yet.
Right.
I will say, I mean, if somebody said, I loved that they taught me behavioralism, and I really didn't like that they asked me about my feelings,
You're like, oh.
I probably would go, okay, so I asked that question because it helps me to know if
Right.
you and I are going to be a good fit.
Right.
That if
Let's find you
I,
somebody else.
right,
Yeah.
if I know that what you're telling me you really loved and what you didn't like is not some, I'm just not a good match. That I'm not going to deliver the thing that you really loved, and that I do regularly incorporate the thing that you didn't like.
Mm-hmm. And we're
We're not a
bad.
good fit.
Right.
Let's move on.
Right.
No hard feelings. I'll help you find something that
Right.
suits your,
Mm-hmm.
your
I think that
likes and dislikes.
even that I think opens the door for them to reach out to you again if they had a question about something,
Hmm.
even as like later down the line,
Hmm.
because you recognize that and then saw that they needed something else.
Hmm. What about, you have talked about this before, that asking those questions, well, is it always a question? Because sometimes you're saying you start supervision and realize that what they're expecting or looking for is just something different.
Right.
Didn't you say, I know you talked about this before, that you had a supervisee that came to supervision just not dressed
Right.
for supervision.
Yeah.
And having, I mean, that was their
Mm-hmm.
preconceived idea or their expectation, and you had
Right.
to kind of help them
Right.
shape that,
Shape
or,
that like just a little bit to know like, oh, like your idea of supervision is not
uh-huh,
like as professional as maybe it should be,
right,
because there is an air of professionalism that goes to it.
right.
And I think helping people understand that like it's not, part of it is like across the board supervision things, and then part of it is interpersonal, like inner,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like, I can see that happening with as many students who got some of their early supervision online because
Oh,
of COVID.
absolutely.
And then they get to this point where they might be seeing you
Mm-hmm.
while they're working at
Mm-hmm.
their first job. Maybe every other supervision session they've had, they came in their
Right.
pajamas
And
because they
so,
were on camera.
right. And they're like, I mean, I
Right,
showered today.
right.
Like, that's the,
Like, I'm awake,
right.
so um yeah, you might be shaping that a little bit to help them know
Right.
what the new expectation is. And does that involve a question, or
I mean, I think sometimes it can involve a question, just asking like, what
what did that
prior,
look like before?
right, right. What did that look like for you? How was that?
Hmm.
Did you feel like you got what you needed out of that? I mean,
I've never asked, but this makes me think maybe I'm going to start asking how many supervisors they've had before.
I do ask that.
Like if they've had one,
Right.
they had one
Mm-hmm.
the entire time they were in school, and I'm going to be the very next one.
Right.
It's going to be I imagine a harder adjustment.
Absolutely. Because they've been in one mindset the whole time.
Or they expect this is
Exactly
what
the
it's
same.
always like.
Right. So it's important.
So, our past experiences are really important in
Mm-hmm.
supervision and counseling.
Yep.
Heather and I would love to hear about your past experiences and how they influence your current counseling and supervision. And we, as always, would love to hear ideas for future topics. Thanks for listening today to Supervision with a Vision.